When a man starts pulling away, the instinct is panic. The mind races. You replay every conversation, reread every message, and ask yourself the same painful question: what did I do wrong? But here is the truth most people never hear. His distance is rarely about you being not enough. More often, it's about him feeling that he's losing himself. Men don't pull away because they stop caring. They pull away because they feel overwhelmed by expectation, spoken or unspoken. Expectation to be consistent when they're unsure. Expectation to show up when they feel emotionally underprepared. Expectation to know where things are going when they themselves are confused. And when a man feels that pressure, his nervous system doesn't lean in, it retreats. Here's the paradox. The moment you start tightening your grip to feel secure is the moment connection starts slipping through your fingers. Not because you're wrong for wanting closeness, but because closeness can't be forced. It must be invited. When he pulls away, it's often because he no longer feels free to come closer on his own terms. Attraction thrives in choice, not obligation. Love grows where there is space to breathe, not where someone feels monitored, tested, or silently graded. And this is where wisdom steps in. Instead of asking, how do I get him back? The more powerful question, how do I stay rooted in myself? Because the most magnetic thing you can do in moments of uncertainty is not to chase clarity, but to embody calm. A grounded woman doesn't beg for reassurance. She doesn't audition for attention. She doesn't shrink her needs, but she also doesn't abandon her dignity. She understands that her worth is not measured by how quickly someone texts back, but by how deeply she is aligned with her own values. When you stop reacting and start responding, something shifts. Your energy changes. The pressure lifts. And suddenly the dynamic resets. He feels the absence of demand. He feels the return of choice. And in that space, curiosity is reborn. Here's a deeper truth. Distance is information. It tells you where he is emotionally, and it gives you the chance to see where you are compromising yourself. Are you overgiving to be chosen? Are you silencing your intuition to avoid being alone? Are you making him the center of your emotional world? Sometimes his pulling away isn't a problem to fix. It's a mirror inviting you to come back to yourself. And when you do, you reclaim something sacred, self-respect. Divine principles teach us that what is meant for you will not require you to abandon yourself to keep it. What is aligned will meet you in peace, not anxiety. Love that is healthy doesn't keep you guessing your worth. It confirms it through consistency, effort, and presence. If he returns when you stop chasing, that tells you something important. And if he doesn't, that also tells you something important. Either way, you win because you stayed whole. The goal is not to make someone stay. The goal is to become the kind of woman who knows she is chosen, even in silence, who trusts that what leaves without clarity was never solid to begin with, who understands that love rooted in fear will always feel unstable, but love rooted in self-trust feels unshakable. So when a man pulls away, don't collapse inward, don't chase outward, stand still, breathe, realign, let your life remain full, your purpose intact, your joy independent. Because the right connection doesn't require you to fight for attention. It recognizes your value and rises to meet it. When a man begins to pull away, the most common assumption is that his feelings have changed or that interest has faded. But in many cases, the real reason has nothing to do with attraction disappearing and everything to do with internal overwhelm. This is a crucial distinction because misunderstanding it often leads to reactions that push him even further away. Men are not raised to process emotions out loud. From an early age, many are taught to manage stress by retreating inward, solving problems privately, and regaining control before re-engaging. So when life starts to feel heavy, work pressure, family responsibilities, financial stress, unresolved personal doubts, or fear about the future, his instinct is not to lean into emotional connection, but to create distance so he can think, recalibrate, and breathe again. This overwhelm doesn't always announce itself clearly. He may not say, I'm struggling, or I feel like I'm failing, because vulnerability feels risky when he doesn't yet understand his own emotions. Instead, what you see is silence, shorter replies, less initiative, or a sudden dip in emotional availability. From the outside, this looks like disinterest. From the inside, it feels like overload. One of the hardest truths to accept is that attraction alone does not override stress. A man can deeply care about someone and still feel incapable of showing up consistently if he feels behind in his own life. When his sense of competence is threatened, connection becomes another responsibility rather than a refuge. In that state, even affection can feel like pressure because it reminds him of expectations he's not sure he can meet. This is where many people unintentionally make things worse. When distance appears, anxiety steps in, questions multiply, reassurance is sought, conversations become heavier, more emotionally charged, and more urgent. While these reactions are understandable, to an overwhelmed man, they can feel like additional weight placed on already full shoulders. Instead of soothing him, they confirm his fear that he cannot keep up. Internal overwhelm is not about a lack of DE. Sire, it's about a lack of emotional bandwidth. Think of it like a phone battery running low. The problem isn't that the phone doesn't want to work. It's that it doesn't have the energy to do so properly. Demanding more usage doesn't recharge it. Giving it space does. When you recognize this, your power returns. You stop personalizing his withdrawal and start responding with emotional maturity. Rather than chasing closeness, you create safety. You allow silence without punishment. You maintain your own rhythm and stability. This communicates something profoundly attractive. You are not dependent on his constant presence to feel secure. Paradoxically, this often makes him feel more capable of returning. When pressure lifts, he can approach from a place of choice rather than obligation. He reconnects because he wants to, not because he feels he has to manage someone else's emotions on top of his own. This doesn't mean you accept inconsistency indefinitely or abandon your needs. It means you understand timing and capacity. You observe patterns. You notice whether he eventually comes back with effort and clarity or whether overwhelm becomes a permanent excuse. Awareness allows discernment. The deeper lesson here is about emotional sovereignty. When you stop assuming his withdrawal defines your worth, you remain centered. You don't shrink, over-explain, or overgive. You stay rooted in your life, your values, and your sense of self. That grounded presence is what allows genuine connection to either recover or reveal its limits. Internal overwhelm is human, but how you respond to it determines whether distance becomes a temporary pause or a permanent separation. When a man pulls away, it is often because he feels pressure to become a version of himself he has not yet grown into. This pressure doesn't always come from words. More often, it lives in expectations, timelines, assumptions, and the silent question of, where is this going? Even when no one is demanding answers out loud, he can feel the weight of needing to be more certain, more consistent, more available, or more defined than he currently is. Many men measure their sense of worth through readiness. Readiness to lead, to provide, to protect, to commit. When they sense that a relationship is moving toward a level of responsibility they are unsure they can sustain, anxiety replaces excitement. Attraction may still be present, but it becomes overshadowed by the fear of failing someone who matters. This is where withdrawal begins. Not because he doesn't care, but because he does. Caring raises the stakes. The more important the connection feels, the more pressure he experiences to show up correctly. And when he doesn't trust himself to do that, distance feels safer than disappointment. Pressure can come from perceived expectations, regular communication, emotional availability, future planning, consistency. None of these are wrong or unreasonable. But if he hasn't yet aligned internally with those roles, he can feel like he's being evaluated rather than accepted. In that state, every interaction carries the risk of falling short. Instead of expressing this fear, he pulls back. He slows down communication. He becomes less expressive. He creates space not to punish, but to escape the feeling of being measured against a standard he didn't consciously agree to yet. Silence becomes his way of regaining control. What's often misunderstood is that this pressure doesn't mean you are asking for too much. It means he is not ready to give what the connection is naturally calling for. The tension arises when chemistry accelerates faster than emotional readiness. The relationship starts to ask for depth, presence, and clarity before he feels solid in his own footing. When someone responds to is withdrawal by pushing for reassurance, clarity, or commitment, The pressure intensifies. The gap between who he is and who he feels he needs to be becomes more obvious. And rather than motivating growth, it triggers avoidance. Distance feels like relief. The most stabilizing response in this moment is not persuasion, explanation, or emotional pursuit. It is calm self-containment. When you remain grounded, continue living fully, and allow the connection to breathe, you remove the sense that he is being forced into a role prematurely. This creates space for him to step forward voluntarily if and when he is ready. There is a profound difference between being desired and being demanded. Desire invites presence, demand triggers resistance. A man moves closer when he feels free to choose, not when he feels cornered by expectation. At the same time, this dynamic teaches an essential truth. Readiness matters more than potential. Someone may care deeply and still be incapable of sustaining the relationship you deserve. His pulling away is information, not a verdict on your worth. When you stop trying to convince someone to rise to a level they haven't claimed for themselves, you preserve your dignity and clarity. You stay open, but not attached to an outcome that requires you to shrink or wait indefinitely. Ultimately, a man who is ready will not feel pressured by depth. He will feel inspired by it. And a woman who honors her own timing will never need to chase someone into readiness. When a man begins to pull away, the instinctive response is often to seek reassurance. You want clarity, confirmation, and emotional grounding. You want to know where you stand, what he feels, and whether the connection is still secure. While this desire is completely human, it often overlooks a deeper truth. Emotional safety matters far more than constant reassurance, especially for someone who is already feeling uncertain or overwhelmed. Emotional safety is not created by frequent questions, emotional check-ins, or repeated conversations about the relationship. It is created by an atmosphere where someone feels accepted without being scrutinized, free without being abandoned, and valued without being pressured. For many men, reassurance seeking can unintentionally feel like emotional surveillance, even when it comes from a place of love. When someone feels they must continually prove their feelings, explain their behavior, or manage another person's anxiety, connection starts to feel like a responsibility rather than a refuge. Instead of being a place where he can exhale, the relationship becomes another area where he fears getting it wrong. This is when pulling away begins, not to create distance from you, but to escape the emotional tension. Emotional safety allows imperfection. It allows pauses. It allows moments of silence without immediate interpretation. When a man senses that he is allowed to be human, confused, uncertain, slower to process, his nervous system relaxes. And when the nervous system relaxes, closeness becomes possible again. Constant reassurance, on the other hand, often communicates a lack of trust. Not necessarily distrust of him, but distrust of the connection itself. It signals that love must be continually confirmed to be believed. Over time, this erodes attraction because attraction thrives where there is confidence, not emotional dependence. This does not mean suppressing your needs or pretending you don't care. It means choosing the timing and energy with which you express them. Emotional safety grows when feelings are shared calmly rather than urgently, honestly rather than repeatedly, and confidently rather than fearfully. One of the most powerful ways to create emotional safety is self-regulation. When you can soothe yourself. Instead of outsourcing that job to someone else, you become a place of peace rather than pressure. You show that your emotional world is stable, not fragile. This stability is deeply attractive because it removes the fear of emotional chaos. A man who feels emotionally safe does not feel trapped. He feels trusted. He doesn't worry that a bad day or a quiet moment will lead to conflict or interrogation. He knows that he is allowed to come closer at his own pace without losing autonomy. Ironically, when emotional safety is present, reassurance often becomes unnecessary. Effort flows more naturally. Communication becomes more consistent. Affection feels genuine rather than reactive. What once required asking begins to be offered freely. There is also a deeper spiritual principle at work here. Peace invites truth. When you create a calm emotional environment, people reveal who they truly are. They either step forward with sincerity or step away with clarity. Both outcomes serve you. If someone can only stay when reassured constantly, the connection is built on anxiety, not alignment. Emotional safety filters out confusion and exposes readiness. By prioritizing emotional safety over reassurance, you shift from fear-based attachment to grounded connection. You stop trying to secure love and start allowing it to unfold. In that space, relationships either deepen authentically or release gracefully, and in both cases, you remain whole. When a man begins to pull away, chasing often feels like the most natural response. You want to fix the distance, restore the closeness, and return things to how they were. Texts become more frequent, questions more pointed, and effort more visible. While this behavior comes from care and fear of loss, it quietly disrupts attraction because it shifts the dynamic from mutual desire to emotional pursuit. Attraction is rooted in polarity and choice. It grows when two people move toward each other freely, not when one feels compelled to close a gap alone. Chasing collapses that polarity. It sends the message, often unintentionally, that your emotional stability depends on his responsiveness. And once someone senses they are being pursued to regulate another person's emotions, desire tends to retreat. This is not because wanting closeness is wrong. It's because chasing replaces confidence with urgency. Urgency communicates scarcity. It says, I might lose you, rather than I trust myself regardless of the outcome. And attraction is drawn to self-trust, not fear. When you chase, you give away your center. Your mood rises and falls with his replies. Your sense of worth becomes entangled with his availability. This energetic shift is felt, even if it's never spoken. A man may not consciously think, she's chasing me, but he feels the pressure of being responsible for your emotional equilibrium. Self-grounding, on the other hand, restores balance. Grounding is the act of coming back into your body, your life, your routines, and your purpose. It means continuing to invest in your world instead of orbiting someone else's. When you ground yourself, you stop reacting and start choosing. This shift is powerful because it changes the energy of the connection without a single conversation. You're no longer trying to pull him closer. You're allowing him to feel the natural space that his distance created. And in that space, he becomes aware of his own desire, or the lack of it. Attraction cannot be negotiated. It responds to presence, not persuasion. When you step back into yourself, you reclaim the qualities that sparked interest in the first place: confidence, independence, emotional steadiness, and self-respect. These traits invite pursuit because they signal that being with you is a choice, not a rescue mission. Self-grounding also protects you. It prevents you from over-investing in someone who may not be able to meet you at the same level. Instead of chasing clarity from him, you gain clarity within yourself. You observe whether his effort increases when pressure is removed. You see whether he steps forward when he is no longer being carried. There is also a deeper lesson here about power. True power in relationships is not control over another person's behavior. It is control over your own responses. When you ground yourself, you demonstrate emotional leadership. You show that you can tolerate uncertainty without collapsing into anxiety. This doesn't mean becoming distant, cold, or manipulative. It means being warm without being needy, open without being attached to an outcome, and present without being desperate for reassurance. Grounded energy says, I enjoy you, but I don't end myself for you. When chasing stops, two things happen. Either he feels the freedom to come closer on his own, reigniting attraction, or the connection naturally fades, revealing misalignment. Both outcomes are forms of truth. In either case, self-grounding restores you to yourself. And from that place, attraction, whether with him or someone else, can grow organically, without force. When a man begins to pull away, it is easy to believe that doing more, giving more, or proving more will draw him back. The instinct is to increase effort in the hope that he will finally see your value and choose you fully. Yet the deeper truth is this: a man reconnects not when he feels convinced, but when he feels chosen, freely, calmly, and without pressure. Being chosen is not about being demanded, persuaded, or emotionally cornered. Demand creates resistance because it removes autonomy. When someone feels that their presence is required to stabilize another person's emotions, connection starts to feel like obligation. Obligation suffocates desire. Choice, on the other hand, ignites it. A man feels chosen when he senses that you want him, not that you need him. There is a subtle but powerful difference. Need says, I cannot feel secure without you. Want says, I enjoy you, but I am whole with or without you. The second creates emotional freedom. The first creates pressure. When a man pulls away, he is often responding to an internal fear of being trapped in expectations he is not ready to fulfill. Even if those expectations are reasonable, the perception of demand triggers withdrawal. He may not articulate this clearly, but his behavior reflects it. Distance becomes his way of reclaiming autonomy. When you respond by stepping back into your own life, something shifts. You are no longer asking him to prove anything. You are no longer seeking constant reassurance. You allow him the DI. Nitty of choice. This does not mean you are indifferent or unavailable. It means you are emotionally self-sufficient. In that space, a man is able to feel his own desire. Without pressure, he can ask himself, do I want to be here? And if the answer is yes, he returns with renewed intention. His effort becomes genuine because it is self-directed, not extracted. This is why ultimatums and emotional confrontations often backfire when attraction is fragile. They force a decision before readiness has formed. A decision made under pressure rarely leads to sustained commitment. It may produce compliance, but not devotion. Being chosen also means choosing yourself. When you honor your time, your boundaries, and your emotional well-being, you communicate self-worth without saying a word. You show that access to you is a privilege, not an entitlement. This quiet confidence is deeply compelling. There is also an important distinction between patience and self-abandonment. Allowing space does not mean waiting indefinitely or tolerating neglect. It means observing behavior over time and letting actions reveal truth. A man who truly values the connection will feel the absence of demand as an invitation to step forward, not an excuse to disappear. When someone reconnects because they feel chosen rather than demanded, the dynamic is healthier. Communication improves. Effort becomes consistent. The relationship feels lighter, not strained by constant emotional negotiation. At a deeper level, this principle aligns with a universal truth. Love must be freely given to be meaningful. Anything that requires pressure to sustain is not rooted in genuine desire. When you allow space for choice, you honor both yourself and the other person. In doing so, you create the conditions for real connection. Either he steps forward willingly or he steps away honestly. And in both outcomes, you remain grounded in your worth, not dependent on his decision. Your power in moments of emotional uncertainty does not come from controlling outcomes, predicting behavior, or managing someone else's feelings. It comes from alignment. Alignment with your values, your self-respect, your boundaries, and your deeper sense of purpose. When anxiety takes over, it pulls you out of that alignment and convinces you that your worth is on the line. But alignment reminds you that who you are does not shrink or expand based on someone else's availability. Anxiety is reactive energy. It looks outward for certainty. It asks questions like, what does this mean? Where do I stand? How do I fix this? While understandable, anxiety places your emotional center outside of yourself. It gives someone else the power to regulate your peace. The more you chase certainty, the more uncertain you feel, because clarity can never come from outside when you are disconnected from yourself. Alignment is the opposite. It is calm, anchored, and self-directed. It means your actions match your standards regardless of how someone else behaves. You don't abandon your routines, your goals, or your sense of self to monitor a relationship. You don't contort yourself to be easier, quieter, or more accommodating out of fear of losing someone. You stay congruent. When you are aligned, you respond instead of react. You don't over-explain your feelings in hopes of being understood. You communicate clearly once, and then you observe. You let behavior speak louder than words. This steadiness creates a powerful contrast to anxiety-driven dynamics where emotions escalate and clarity dissolves. Alignment also brings discernment. Instead of asking, why is he doing this? You ask, does this align with what I want and deserve? That shift is transformative. It moves you from self-doubt to self-trust. You stop interpreting distance as rejection and start seeing it as information. Anxiety tries to preserve connection at any cost. Alignment preserves self-respect first. And paradoxically, relationships that grow from self-respect are the only ones capable of becoming secure. When someone senses that you will not abandon yourself to keep them, they either rise to meet you or remove themselves from your path. There is a deeper spiritual principle at work here. What is meant for you will not require you to live in constant fear. Peace is not a reward you earn after someone chooses you. It is a signal that you are on the right path. When a connection pulls you out of alignment repeatedly, it is inviting you to return to yourself, not to try harder. Alignment does not mean emotional detachment. It means emotional maturity. You can care deeply without losing your footing. You can hope without clinging. You can love without self-betrayal. When you choose alignment over anxiety, you stop chasing reassurance and start embodying certainty. You become steady, not stiff, open, not overextended. This grounded presence is naturally attractive because it reflects wholeness. And here is the quiet truth. Even if alignment leads to loss, it leads to the right kind of loss. It removes what cannot meet you where you stand. It clears space for what can. Your power was never in getting someone to stay. It was always in staying true to yourself, even when the outcome was unclear. Thank you for giving me the space to share these insights with you. It's been an honor to contribute to your journey. Goodbye for now, and may clarity, strength, and alignment guide you forward.